Hi, I'm Joe Saunders with Miniature Landscape Hobbies. In this video, we're going to look at 5 tips to help you get the most out of your model builds. If you like learning about building in miniature, please remember to subscribe to our channel. Like anything else, with model building, there's a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things. Let's look at some essential practices for building models. I'm going to demonstrate on this metal and resin kit by Flames of War and this plastic kit from the Team Yankee range. The first and probably most important tip I'd like to pass on is to build your models using what's called sub-assemblies. This is the process where you remove all of the parts from a sprue for a specific section of the model. And then you build that part before moving on to the rest. I always use the instructions to coordinate with which section I like. So often I'll build the hull of a tank before I build the turret. The advantage is because I only cut the parts off that I need, I never run the risk of getting parts from later in the assembly confused and put in the wrong spot. The next tip I want to pass on has to do with cleaning the edges of your model components. After you remove the component from the sprue with your sprue cutters, you'll often have little nubs left where it used to join the frame. You need to take a good sharp knife and go in and scrape those off. If you don't, when you go to fit the pieces together, they won't always fit flush and you won't get a good join with your glue. Now here's another problem. This is a scar in the plastic itself where the knife cut too deep. You can deal with this using a needle file. So grab your file and gently file down the surface around the scar until everything is flush and level. Afterwards, if there's any extra plastic, you can just cut it off with your blade. Also, a really useful skill is dry fitting. So that's where you take the model prior to assembling it with glue and put it together as a test. So in this case, these track sections are keyed. That means that there are specific tabs on the sides so you don't get them confused when you build them. When you dry fit, you're looking for all these little problems ahead of time so that you don't damage the model with the glue by putting the parts in the wrong place. My third tip is to make sure you have the right glue for the job you're doing when working on your models. There's essentially 3 types of glues used in model building. There's thin body plastic cement, regular plastic cement, and super glue. Each has a specific use, and using them correctly is pretty important. So with a regular plastic cement, such as this Tester's Orange, it's got a fairly thick consistency, and it promotes a really strong bond by melting the parts together. When you're using this sort of glue, you need to use it where it's hidden from view, like here on the side of this tank. Now the virtue is that it provides a very, very solid bond and is appropriate in areas like on these tracks where the model needs to be able to withstand a certain amount of pressure from handling. On plastic models, the thin cement works best for most other applications. It's quite useful and it comes with an applicator usually right out of the bottle. When you apply it, it has a low density, so it runs into seams and cracks where it promotes a really solid bond. In particular, it's really useful in situations like this. Here on this model, there is a tiny seam at the front of the tank where the halves meet together. All you need to do is take your glue and run it smoothly along the front, and the thinness of the glue is drawn by capillary action into the gap. This brings us to super glue. And super glue is useful when you're gluing materials together that aren't of the same kind. So it's essential, as in this case, when I'm gluing the soft plastic of this crew member to the hard plastic of the turret. And you'll need it when working with metal models because you'll need it to glue metal parts or metal parts to resin parts. Here I'm doing a little trick with adhering it, and that's using tweezers because you don't want to get super glue on your fingers. My fourth tip is so simple that sometimes people might not even think about it. But that's when working with small parts, you really should keep a spare cup or container around to put your parts in. As you're moving multiple models and tools back and forth across the surface, it's pretty common to lose something. And when you're working with small scale models like these 1/100 scale models, nothing is worse than losing a tire or a gun barrel and not being able to complete the model correctly. Here's an M1 Abrams which I finished last week. And yes, I forgot to get out the little cup to hold my spare parts. Do you notice something missing? Yes, that little tiny box that goes below the grenade launcher on the side is missing. And being all of 4 millimeters long and 2 millimeters tall, it's somewhere on my basement floor, and I'm never going to see it again. This brings me to my fifth and final tip for this video, and that's to offer some guidance on how to assemble resin and metal models. The idea of working with a resin model with metal parts isn't as common as it used to be. These used to be the normal procedure for 1/100th models, but now thankfully they're being replaced more often than not by plastic models. Although you do have to work with resin occasionally, and you will find it in other hobbies such as Forge World models for Games Workshop. Resin needs to be cleaned first because there's a oily chemical on the outside that's used to release it from the mold. So first thing you have to do is get out some dish soap, just a drop or two, in some warm water, and submerge the model in it to soak for a while. After 5 minutes or so, you can take the model out and brush it off with a stiff bristle toothbrush or an old paintbrush. That should get the release agent off, and now you're ready to glue it. But resin's tough stuff to work with. There's not much for parts to grip to it. So you're going to need to take a file to the side of the resin model, and I suggest you do it to metal parts too, and roughen up those parts to provide a little more surface to grip. Then all you need to do is go in with super glue and firmly adhere everything together like you would do with any other model. There you have it. 5 tips to help you enhance your model building. Of course, there's plenty more, and I'm sure you have your own ideas as well. If you have any tips you'd like to share with us, how about you put them in the comments below? We would love to hear from you. I've recently opened an Etsy store. If you'd like to purchase any of the terrain I build, please by all means go over and check it out. The link is in the description. Proceeds from any purchases you make will go to helping the channel. That's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as we enjoyed making it. Please stay tuned for new content twice weeklies on Sundays and Thursdays. Miniature Landscape Hobbies is your source for regular model building, miniature painting, and diorama content. If you have not yet subscribed, make sure you do, and press the bell button to receive immediate notifications so you do not have to miss out. Thanks for watching, and until next time, remember to keep building life in miniature.